Welcome to In the Arena, A-Corp Media's place to discuss all things political in a manner that promotes public discourse instead of public discord and civility instead of civil war. I'm Phillip Britt, your host, and today I'm joined by announced Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress in the 8th Congressional District, Franklin Delano Roth II, known to his friends and family as Denny. Can I call you Denny?
Absolutely.
Welcome to In the Arena.
Well, thank you.
We're thrilled to have you here today. I am excited about getting to, I just got to meet you today for the first time and excited to have you on our show. So tell us, who is Denny? Tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from southwestern Indiana, born and raised there on a small grain farm. I ended up farming with my dad for 26 years till he decided to retire. I decided to get out. Things weren't that great. I'd lost about half the ground I was farming because the landlord sold out. So I made a decision to get out and move to Jefferson County, Missouri, Festus area, where I had met a woman a few years earlier, and we ended up getting married and worked for Monsanto for a while and worked for Land O'Lakes for a while, and then finished up before I retired last year as a truck driver for Estes Express Line.
So most of your career has been agriculture oriented, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
What got you into that? Because that's not what your degree's in. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my dad, we didn't have grandparents that farmed. My dad just always wanted to farm. So he and my mom saved a little money and bought some machinery and rented some land. This is back in the late 50s. Okay. Started farming. Unfortunately, my dad had an intestine rupture and put him in the hospital. Had to have a foot and a half of his intestine removed. Couldn't work for a year. So the insurance they had wasn't very good and forced him to basically auction everything off. Oh. So they were out of farming again. Lived in poverty for 4 or 5 years. My dad was able to go back to work. Went to work at a local Alcoa plant. Good union job, good benefits, good insurance. And they saved enough money and they bought 100 acres and we were back in farming again.
Gotcha.
Persistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say if farming's in your blood, it's in your blood.
My dad always wanted to farm. He worked on farms as a kid, even though his dad was a carpenter, but something he always wanted to do, and that's what he did.
All right, well, good. So the name of this show is In the Arena. We call it that because of the famous Teddy Roosevelt speech, which is commonly known as the man in the arena. And essentially what that speech, and I know you're aware of it, you've studied politics and government, but for those who don't know, that speech which Teddy Roosevelt gave after he was president, he had been president, but it was later on in his career, essentially says the important person is the man who actually gets in there, the man or woman now, that gets in there and actually is involved in the political process. Not the one that stands outside and criticizes. Or just, the pundits, as we call them today, that haven't actually been involved, but they sit back and they know all about it and they have all the answers. This is your first foray into the arena.
It is.
So tell us why now and what has prompted you to decide to jump into the arena.
Well, for years I was one of those people that stood back and criticized. One, I didn't have enough time to get involved in politics. Farming took a lot of time, and then when I worked for Monsanto, I actually lived in Illinois. Okay. My home was here, but I took an apartment in Illinois. So it's just the time involved. But once I retired, my wife said, you sit around and complain because you read all the news and all that, but you need to get involved with it. So I thought about it, and it's, like I said, it's not an easy decision to come to because the time involved in the 8th District is so large. It's a lot of time involved getting around to all the counties and all the other things that go with it, trying to fundraise. And I mean, I'm up against a pretty well-funded opponent, obviously. Right. So it just, it came down to it's something that I've always wanted to do and just made the decision at this point in time, since I have the time now, to jump in.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the size of this district. For people who are watching, the 8th Congressional District, 28 counties, goes from basically Jefferson County in the north all the way down the eastern side of the state of Missouri, all the way to the Arkansas line, and then west all the way to Ozark, Wright, Douglas County to the west, and northwest all the way to Rolla, Phelps County. That's a huge geographic district. Yeah. I mean, it has to be that big to get the 722,000 people you have to have for a district because it's mostly rural.
Right.
But so what's your plan to be able to get out there to every part of this district and talk to folks? Because I mean, the reality is that's a lot of ground to cover. So what's your plan for that?
Drive.
Yeah.
Lots of driving. As an ex-truck driver, I'm pretty used to that.
Sure.
But, what I'm going to try to do is to get out and meet people is to coordinate with local papers, maybe do radio interviews. When I go to a county, maybe have town hall meetings and invite everyone, not just Democrats, but obviously Republicans and everyone, and just try to reach out to as many people as I can that way. I'm going to attend fairs, parades,
Right.
church picnics, I mean, whatever they have, but anything to get out and meet people and try to get my message out for what my plans are for the 8th District.
Well, you know, and today the folks tend to call that kind of old school campaigning. Right. You know, a modern campaign is mostly mailing and you know, kind of the direct approach like that.
Right.
But I'll be honest, the folks around here, at least in this part of the district, they like to see the person, look them in the eye, and shake their hands. I mean, whether it's the person running for county coroner or the person running for the United States Senate, they want to see that person and have a chance to talk to them. And so I think the idea that you're getting out and meeting people is the right direction, at least in our part of the 8th Congressional District. So the next question you talk about, you mentioned earlier, was the incumbent. And we know Jason Smith is the incumbent, and he was elected in a special election in 2013 when Joanne Emerson chose not to run or she chose to leave office after having been reelected. And since then, he's never gotten less than 2/3 of the vote. So how is this time going to be different? How can you reach out to that group of folks that for the last 10 years have voted for him,
Right.
as opposed to the Democratic candidate? The most that any Democratic candidate has gotten against him was in that first special election where Steve Hodges got 27% of the vote. So tell me how you're going to get more than 27% of the vote.
Well, it's an uphill battle, no doubt. It's a very red district, a very conservative district. But what I'm going to try to do is get out and, like I said, meet as many people as I can, try to draw the differences between Jason Smith and myself. I'm basically one of the people in this district.
Right.
You know, Jason, since he got out of law school, has basically just run for office, state office holder, and in the last 10 years as a congressional office holder. So I think I have a lot more in common with the average person in this district. I lived in poverty as a kid until my dad got a good union job and brought us out and was able to buy 100 acres and start us into farming. You know, we've, like I said, farmed. I've worked for Monsanto, Land O'Lakes, these people. I've trucked. I've done that all my life. So I think I can connect with people. And unfortunately, I was a single dad. I have 2 sons. My youngest is actually a radio DJ in Evansville, Indiana. Okay. My oldest, who I raised as a single parent all the way through school, passed away from a drug overdose 3.5 years ago, fentanyl.
Okay.
And as I get around to all the, you know, people and counties, I find out what a problem that is.
Absolutely.
So that's unfortunately, that's one other thing that connects me with people. But I've been blue collar all my life. That's all I know. So I think if people will take the time to listen to what I have to say, I think most people will agree with the things I want. I want people to have better jobs and higher wages. I want a higher minimum wage. I want universal health care for everyone. There's 12% of the people in this district that have no health care at all. And we have the highest percentage of child poverty. We have the highest percentage of senior poverty. We have the lowest household median income of any district in the state, and unfortunately one of the 10 lowest in the entire country. And that's just not a place we need to be. We have rural hospitals closing. We just lost another factory. I mean, we're going in the wrong direction here. So what I intend to do is draw the differences between myself and Jason Smith.
So tell us, I mean, you mentioned some of the issues that are hugely important right now in the district, but let's elaborate on some of those a little bit. So tell us what you see as the major issues that we're facing in the 8th Congressional District. And I know, again, recognizing that it's geographically a little bit diverse. You go from the Ozarks to Flatland,
Right.
to essentially St. Louis metropolitan region. But so tell us what you see as the main issues that should have to be addressed in this region.
Well, I think one of the issues, and it's not just for this region, it's for the state and the entire country, is the wealth inequality that's going on. We have the highest wealth inequality that we've had since the 1920s. We know how that ended up. But we have to get back to a tax system that is fair and taxes everybody. I mean, we now have billionaires and corporations that basically pay no tax at all. And then we wonder why we can't support our infrastructure. Now, why we can't even afford our own space program anymore. We have to hire the Russians to haul us into space. Something tells me John Kennedy's rolling over in his grave at that thought. But we no longer invest in things. And I think with Biden, when he came in with his Chips and Science Act and his infrastructure bill, has started to put money back into rural areas. I know in Missouri we're going to have I-70 widened to 3 lanes. I was just in Iron County last week, and they said that they're going to get 3 or 4 bridges replaced due to the infrastructure money that they're going to get. Chip factories are being built in this country, and one of the problems, why don't we have some of that going on here?
Right.
Why don't we have some of that construction coming in to this area? We keep losing, we're not gaining.
True.
And that's not sustainable. So the wealth inequality is one thing. Another thing is the health care. We need universal health care. There are 34 industrialized countries in the world, and only one of them doesn't have some type of universal health care. Guess which one? United States. We have a for-profit health care system, so it's not based on your medical needs, it's based on how much profit you're going to be able to make the insurance companies. And we have to get away from that. We need a system that covers everybody. People say, well, I don't want my taxes raised, but if you add up what your premiums are, which continue to go up, even if you're in an employer plan, the co-pays, the deductibles, and you figure out what you pay out a year, especially if you have anything go wrong, if you have a medical issue, and offset that with what a small tax would be to cover that. And it could be set up something like Social Security, where you pay half the tax and the employer pays half tax, the employer writes it off. If you're a farmer or some other person that's self-employed, you do Social Security. You write off that half of it, that extra that you have to pay. So there's a way to do it. People say, well, you have to wait in line. Well, you have to wait in this country. Go try to see a specialist in this country. You'll wait 5 or 6 months to get in some cases. I was just in Aruba in December. It's a little island of 100,000 people. They have universal health care. They pay a 7% tax. And I talked to 2 or 3 people, and they said, we wouldn't trade it for anything because they pay for everything. One guy had to go to Colombia. His wife needed heart surgery, and they couldn't do it there. They went to Colombia. They paid everything to go over there and back. So why can't we take what's really good in these systems, look at what's maybe not so good, and improve on it, and come up with a system for this country? But we're the only country that bankrupts its citizens and forces our citizens to ration their insulin or other medications that they need. I mean, you see the articles, somebody's died because they were trying to ration their insulin because they couldn't afford it, or they were trying to keep the heat on this month. So it's just a poor system, and it should be a right of everyone to be able to have medical care. But we already have 35% of the people in this district on some sort of government health care. We have between Medicare, Medicaid, VA benefits. So why not cover everyone? It can be done. We have to get past the wall of money that the insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies throw at the politicians to get through it.
So that's an issue that I think is interesting and important. You mentioned fundraising, and you mentioned that it's hard, that fundraising is a big part of running a campaign like this, and again, the power of incumbency, that person who's already a congressperson certainly has an advantage when it comes to calling folks up and asking for money. How do you avoid becoming obliged to someone when you raise a bunch of money? For example, there's always the criticism, you just mentioned, that the money that pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies throw at politicians when they raise money. how do you, as a person who's not independently wealthy, who doesn't have billions of dollars to throw at their own campaign, how do you raise money for a campaign, but not become obliged to big business, to corporate America, to PACs? How do you do that?
Do it grassroots. Rely on smaller donations, reach out to people which is what I've been trying to do. I haven't solicited donations from corporations or anything like that. That's not what I'm about, because I'm not going to be beholden to anybody except the working man. That's who I want to help. And since Citizens United ruling in 2010 has just opened up a floodgate of money. I mean, they're spending, what did they spend in Iowa, $120 million in a state that has how many votes?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. What could that $120 million been used for besides
a lot
to buy votes, which is basically what they're doing. So yeah, my campaign is just basically built on grassroots donations and small donations, $20, $30, $50, whatever people can afford.
Do you feel confident that you can raise sufficient funds that way?
Well, I'm never going to match Jason Smith, there's no doubt. I mean, he has access to all the money he wants. Being in the position he is as chairman of the House Ways and Means, I think he's sitting somewhere between $2.5, $3 million now in his campaign chest. So I'm never going to match that. I don't think I have to, because he's sitting in Washington and allowing the advertising to do his work. I'm going to be out here meeting people and talking to them face to face and say, this is who I am. This is why you need to vote for me. This is how I'm different from Jason Smith. These are the things I believe in, and it's the things that most people believe in. When I get around and talk to people, I always ask them, I said, who here doesn't want to make more money?
Right.
Okay, who doesn't want a simpler healthcare system where you don't have to make 500 phone calls to an insurance company or to a doctor or hospital to get a bill paid? Yeah. It's nonsense. We shouldn't have to go through that. Who doesn't want their Social Security guaranteed when they retire and have higher benefits? We can do that too. All we have to do is end the cap, but they don't have the fortitude to do it because they have money butting up against them. But we can fix a lot of the problems, and problems that everybody agrees needs to be fixed. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. Like I said, everybody wants these things. So that's what I'm out here promoting.
So one of the things that someone, especially someone who's running to unseat an incumbent, has a tendency, and I agree with you, there are a lot of things wrong with what's going on right now, whether it's politics, whether it's the government, there are a lot of things that need to be changed. But let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about, what do you see? You just started traveling around the 8th Congressional District. I don't know how much you've traveled around the district before you decided to run. I know you drove a truck and probably were throughout a good portion of it. But what are the things you like about the 8th Congressional District?
Well, it's people like me.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're blue-collar people. Like I've lived in poverty like some of the people here. Unfortunately, lost a child to drugs that so many in this district have. So I have a lot in common with people. I mean, I've worked hard on my life. I know what it's like to work an 18, 20-hour day and then have to come home and with a child at home and try to get them fed and get them in bed or go make the parent-teacher conference or ball practice or a ball game, things like that. I mean, things that people do every day in this district. And Jason doesn't have that experience. He's never been married, no kids. Like I said, he's been in Washington for 10 years. He was a state rep for years. What does he have in common with the average person in this district? I'm one of them. I've lived the same life. So that's what I'm trying to tell people. Take a look at me just simply because I'm one of you.
Okay. Well, Denny, thanks for joining us, but I'm going to give you the final word, let you have something to say to the people of the 8th Congressional District. So.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Well, my message would be, when you go to vote this summer and this fall, don't just look at whether there's an R behind the person's name. Dig a little deeper and see what they actually stand for and compare the candidates. Does this person really represent me, or am I just voting for him because he has an R behind his name? And the other thing I want to impress upon people, we're not going to get a majority. I don't care which party you are in Washington. They're going to be tight majorities. So we're going to have to work together to get things done. That's just the way it's going to have to be. And these factions on left or right that say it's my way or the highway is not going to get anything done. So we have to come together, and you're not going to get everything you want in every single bill. It's impossible. Anybody out there that's married knows you can even live with someone and not have the same views all the time. But the other thing is, we don't have to hate each other over this. We don't. We can disagree on politics. We can sit down and have a drink or a beer together and discuss issues and not get mad at each other and hate each other over it. So that would be my message to everyone out there, is we can disagree, but don't hate each other. And I would very much appreciate people going to my website. It's at www.fdrii, it's for the second, FDR the second, number 4, mo.com. And you can look at all my issues, where I stand on everything.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Franklin Delano Roth II, better known to us all as Denny. We're glad to have you here with us today, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in the arena.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.